You know, I guess the question is, how do you legislate behavior? You know, it's hard. Tell me, Gail, and then I'll go to Terrence, what are the most typical issues that you face when you talk to people?
Oh my gosh.
Well, let it out. Tell us.
Oh my gosh.
What's the most common?
You know, the most common is through email. People use email as their way to communicate with people versus communicate with people one-on-one. So all kinds of conflicts start, and instead of resolving it and picking up the telephone, they continue through email. So there's an email war.
So you have these email strings of anxiety and anger, and they just keep going back
and forth because everybody
you know,
wants to get the last word.
And email is so antiseptic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the biggest email, I have a short story to tell. I remember I was working as a consultant, and I refused to use the telephone. Or I started, and the person, I should put it this way, when I started to use the telephone, they were unable to deal with my request. So then it went to email. It was the only way that I could get the information that I needed or wanted. And this person would not respond. They simply would not respond, and it just escalated, and it escalated, and it escalated.
And it gets beyond that, because it's not just not responding. It's the short responses. It's the tone that comes across.
It's also lack of courage, because you're sitting there typing this angst out, and you can keep going and going and going. I did this once, you know, with someone, and somebody finally got in the middle and said, enough, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
But what about all caps in emails?
Oh, it's a bad.
Shouting.
No, yes, it's yelling, it's shouting.
All
Even
caps.
there's a rule. There is the rule. There should be an introduction. A hi, how are you? There should be some type of request for assistance, and there should be a pleasant close.
I always say, hope
That's
things
the
are
rule.
well.
They're perfect.
Even if the email is
Perfect.
tough.
I mean,
That's what you want.
Here it is. If you cannot say what the email is about in the subject line, don't use an email. Just don't use an email.
Okay, what other thing do you see in the workplace? The common issues.
From a broad stroke, people's credibility being threatened. And sometimes it's because there's lack of trust, and sometimes it's simply that we're not respecting the gifts, the value, the uniqueness that each individual brings to the workplace. And when someone feels threatened, when someone feels that they're not being heard, that they can't make a contribution, that what they have to offer is not important, that will put people in defense mode.
When they're diminished in terms of their own self-image in the workplace.
And well, that goes back to a traditional management theory. That means that the operation itself and its culture is not progressive, it's traditional, because they're not hearing the people. And organizations today need to work toward being more and more progressive, because then it is about the people. It's about empowering them, it's about hearing their ideas. That's what you do, Larry.
Well, try. How about the gender gap? I mean, you know, here I've been working in my career for a long time. And I've seen a lot of changes, but I still see that basic, underneath, subtle and not so subtle bigotry, man and female. It happens, doesn't it?
It happens. Differences. I mean, the differences now are age we're seeing. We still see, of course, gender differences. And maybe I have a habit of oversimplifying it, but they are exactly that. They're differences. And differences are what cause people to miscommunicate, because we don't take the time to start by first hearing and understanding the other. When you put the other first, you can begin to negotiate those differences. You can live with the paradoxes, with the contradictions.
I got to get back to the gender thing here.
Yeah.
I have to, because as a woman, and I do feel in a man's world, there are certain places I can go and certain places that I can't, and that definitely exists. And it can take away from my credibility when I know that I can compete in a man's world.
Now let's say you have. I remember years ago at one company I worked at, they brought us a film about sexual harassment. And I was stunned, because I grew up in a way where I was taught to respect everybody. That's the way I was brought up. And when this film was running, it showed episodes of sexual harassment. They were actors, and there was laughter in the audience. Now, I presume that there was laughter because people may have seen themselves or were uncomfortable. But the amount of laughter shocked me. Some people didn't take it seriously. You know, for example, somebody says to a woman, that's good for a woman. That's a good job for a woman. That's the typical kind. People still say things like that.
Yeah. Or thanks, hon.
Thanks, hon.
Thanks, hon.
Yeah, but now what if it happens the other way? There are women who I've met in who will call you sweetie and honey and, you know, things like that.
I think, you know, it does come down to intention.
Now, if they know you, that might be another story. All right? When do you not hug in a workplace?
Well, you have to judge the context.
Yeah, well, the rule of thumb is you're not supposed to.
You don't hug.
That's the rule of thumb. Now, obviously, we break some of those
You ever
barriers.
hug one of your clients just because you're so happy and successful with them?
No, well, not that reason. But if I say hello or I'm seeing them out at some type of event, there have been times I have. Am I supposed to? The answer to that is no.
What about you?
Simplified, I have to agree with Gail. I mean, eliminate that as a dynamic. However, read context. I think a lot of some of these tensions come about around intentions. When we know that the intention is one of power, it's one of demeaning, it's one of not respect, then people will respond and react. If there is an intention of humor and someone picks it up as being authentic and as being real, and the context says, this is all right, I'm not insulting you, I don't mean this as a power play, then some of these things that are a little bit more gray have some license, I feel. What do you think, Gail?
Well, across the board, I agree with you, but the challenge is that there are some people that don't distinguish between the two. They're very black and white, and it becomes very important that when it comes to issues of sexual harassment, you stay away from anything that's gender-related or honey or the sweetie or any of those words, just to be on the safe side. I mean, it's important for everybody to just follow the rules today.
Now we'll get from sexual harassment to sexual harassment right after this.